It was 3 a.m. when I received the email notification. "Congratulations on your property sale," it read. Except I hadn't sold any property. My hands shook as I frantically logged into my investment portal to discover that 4 of my carefully acquired rental properties had been transferred to new owners, all without my knowledge or consent. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. In total, nearly $1.2 million in real estate that I had painstakingly built over a decade was gone. The transactions had been processed through a series of legal documents that somehow included my signature. As I stared at my screen in disbelief, my husband Jack rolled over and murmured, "Everything okay, Emma?" "Your parents sold my investment." "Properties," I whispered, my voice trembling with shock. "How is that even possible?" What Jack didn't know, what his parents certainly didn't know, was that I had quietly added special deed restrictions to each property years ago. A precaution my grandmother had advised that I never thought I'd need. Those restrictions were about to change everything. The morning light filtered through our bedroom curtains, casting soft shadows across the polished hardwood floor of our Lakeside Heights home. I hadn't slept at all since discovering the property transfers. My eyes burned from staring at legal documents and frantically searching for answers online. Jack had left early for work, clearly uncomfortable with the confrontation that had erupted when I showed him the email. "My parents wouldn't do that," he had insisted, his voice defensive but his eyes unable to meet mine. "There must be some mistake. They're just helping Ryan get back on his feet after the tech company failed." But there was no mistake. 4 properties, a small apartment complex in Pine Valley Estates, and 3 single-family homes in developing neighborhoods, all legally transferred to new owners with proceeds directed to Fusion Tech Solutions, my brother-in-law Ryan's failed startup. Properties I had purchased with my inheritance and grown through careful management while building my interior design business. I picked up my phone and called the one person I knew would understand. Sophia answered on the second ring, her voice still husky with sleep. "Emma, it's not even 7 yet. What's wrong?" "Everything," I said, my voice breaking. "I need your help. Can you meet me at Harvest Cafe in an hour?" Sophia didn't hesitate. "I'll be there. Do you want me to call Daniel? He might have some financial insight." "Yes, please. And I'm going to call Andrew Coleman, too. I need legal advice immediately." After hanging up, I dressed mechanically, trying to process what had happened. Jack and I had been married for 8 years. We had always maintained separate finances. His family had money from generations of banking, while I had built my own wealth from scratch, starting with my grandmother's modest inheritance. When I shared my plans to invest in real estate, Harold and Martha Wilson had been dismissive, calling it a hobby, while they pumped money into their son Ryan's various business ventures. "Real estate is risky," Harold had pronounced at a family dinner 2 years ago. "Too much maintenance, too many headaches. Stocks and bonds, that's where you should put your money." I had smiled politely and continued purchasing properties anyway, gradually building a small portfolio that generated reliable passive income. Jack had been supportive, or at least indifferent. He was busy climbing the corporate ladder at his father's investment firm, often working late hours and traveling frequently for business meetings. The Harvest Cafe was quiet when I arrived. I claimed a corner table and spread out the documents I had printed, including the original deed restrictions I had added to each property. My grandmother's advice echoed in my mind. "Always protect what's yours, Emma. People change, circumstances change, but good planning remains your best defense." Sophia arrived first, impeccably dressed despite the early hour. Her legal background made her especially valuable in a crisis. "Tell me everything," she said, sliding into the booth. I pushed the papers toward her. Jack's parents somehow transferred ownership of my investment properties to fund Ryan's tech company. They forged my signature on the transfer documents, 4 properties, Sophia. Everything I've worked for." She examined the papers, her expression darkening. "These are legitimate transfer documents with what appears to be your signature. How could they possibly have the authority to do this?" "I don't know," I admitted. "But I had added deed restrictions to each property years ago. Restrictions that should have prevented any sale without specific written authorization from me, notarized and verified in person." Sophia's eyes widened as she read the restriction clauses. "Emma, this is brilliant. These clauses explicitly state that any transfer without your in-person notarized consent is automatically null and void, with ownership reverting to you immediately. Will it hold up legally? They obviously forged my signature on the transfer documents." "That's where Andrew will come in," Sophia said as the cafe door opened and both Daniel Kim and Andrew Coleman walked in together. Daniel, my financial advisor for the past 5 years, looked concerned. Andrew, an estate lawyer who had helped me draft the deed restrictions, appeared grimly determined. They joined us at the table, and I quickly summarized what had happened. Andrew examined the documents, his expression growing increasingly confident. "These transfer documents are completely invalid. The deed restrictions you added create an absolute barrier to unauthorized sales. The restrictions were properly recorded with the county and would appear in any legitimate title search." "So how did they manage to sell the properties at all?" I asked. "That's the troubling part," Andrew replied. "Either they deliberately concealed the restrictions, or the title company was negligent in their search. Either way, we have grounds for immediate legal action to void the sales and investigate the fraud." Daniel had been reviewing the financial documents. "They directed all proceeds to Fusion Tech Solutions," he confirmed. "Over $1.2 million. But there's something else that concerns me." He pointed to a section of the bank statement I had printed. "These withdrawals from your joint account with Jack, $50,000 over the past 3 months. Did you authorize these?" I felt the blood drain from my face. "No, I rarely check that account. We each maintain separate accounts for our personal finances and only use the joint account for household expenses." Sophia placed her hand over mine. "Emma, I hate to ask this, but is it possible Jack was involved?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. Jack, who had been so defensive this morning. Jack, who worked at his father's company and had access to my personal information. Jack, whose brother's failing business had been draining the Wilson family resources for years. "I don't know," I said quietly. "I honestly don't know anymore." Daniel looked grim. "We need to act quickly to protect your remaining assets. I recommend freezing the joint account immediately and securing any other investments or properties you have." Andrew was already making notes. "I'll file for an emergency injunction today to void the property transfers based on the deed restrictions and apparent fraud. We'll also need to alert the police about the forgery." As they outlined the immediate steps, my phone buzzed with a text from Jack. "We need to talk. Ryan and my parents are coming over tonight. Please be reasonable about this. Family helps." "Family?" I showed the text to the others. "Don't confirm or deny anything," Andrew advised. "We need to understand exactly what happened before you confront them. In fact, I'd recommend you not be home tonight." "Stay with me," Sophia offered. "Immediately." I nodded, grateful for her support, but a new thought was forming, one that made my stomach clench with dread. If they accessed my investment properties and forged my signature, what else might they have done? Daniel immediately understood. "Let's check your credit report and all your financial accounts right now." Over the next hour, a disturbing pattern emerged. Multiple credit cards had been opened in my name over the past 6 months. A home equity line of credit had been taken out against our house without my knowledge. My signature had been forged on loan documents for Ryan's business, making me a guarantor for over $300,000 in business debt. "This is systematic identity theft and fraud," Andrew said, his voice hard with anger. "And given the timing and nature of these transactions, it had to involve someone with intimate access to your personal information?" "Jack," I whispered, the betrayal cutting deeper than I could have imagined. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. My husband of 8 years, the man I had built a life with, had been complicit in his family's scheme to steal my financial security. "We need to go to the police," Sophia insisted. "This goes beyond civil action." I nodded, feeling strangely calm despite the catastrophic revelations. Perhaps it was shock, or perhaps it was the knowledge that my grandmother's advice about the deed restrictions might save me from complete financial ruin. As we prepared to leave for the police station, I received another text from Jack. My parents explained everything. The properties were underwater anyway. Ryan's company just needs a temporary loan. We can discuss repayment terms when you're being more rational. The audacity of his message snapped something inside me. The properties had all been profitable, meticulously maintained, with consistently appreciating values. Jack knew this. He had seen the quarterly reports I received. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a calculated betrayal. At the police station, Detective Garcia listened carefully to my account, examining the documents with growing concern. "Financial crimes involving family members are unfortunately common," she explained, "but the scale and sophistication of this one is unusual. The forged signatures, the systematic identity theft, the unauthorized property transfers, this appears to be a coordinated effort." "Will you be able to recover my properties?" I asked, focusing on the most immediate concern. "The deed restrictions you added provide a strong legal basis for voiding the sales," she confirmed. "But these cases can be complicated. The buyers may be innocent third parties who believed they were purchasing the properties legitimately." Andrew leaned forward. "That's why we've already filed for an emergency injunction. The deed restrictions were properly recorded. Any title search should have revealed them, which means either the title company was negligent or someone deliberately concealed them." As Detective Garcia initiated the formal investigation, I felt a strange sense of calm settling over me. The initial shock had given way to a cold clarity. My marriage was over, that much was certain. But thanks to my grandmother's advice and my own foresight in adding those deed restrictions, I might still salvage my financial future. Sophia drove me to her downtown Westbrook apartment, a sleek one-bedroom with panoramic views of the city skyline. "You can stay as long as you need," she assured me, showing me to her guest room. I need to get some things from the house, I realized. Clothes, important documents, my laptop. "We'll go tomorrow while Jack's at work," Sophia suggested. "Or I can go with you now if you feel up to it." I considered the confrontation that would likely ensue if I returned home while Jack's family was there. Tomorrow is better. I need to think clearly about next steps. That evening, as Sophia ordered takeout from our favorite Thai restaurant, my phone exploded with messages. Jack, alternating between apologetic pleas and thinly veiled accusations that I was overreacting. Martha, my mother-in-law, insisting that family financial matters should be handled privately, not through lawyers. Ryan, claiming he had been assured that I had agreed to invest in his company. I forwarded each message to Andrew without responding. "Document everything," he had advised. "Don't engage directly until we have the full legal strategy in place." Daniel called with updates on securing my remaining assets. "I've frozen all your accounts that Jack might have access to," he reported. "And I've placed fraud alerts on your credit. The good news is that your design business accounts appear untouched. They probably didn't think to look there." Evergreen Design Studio, my interior design firm, had grown steadily over the past 6 years. While not as substantial as my real estate investments, it provided reliable income and was completely separate from the Wilsons' financial sphere. They had always treated it as my little hobby, never taking it seriously enough to consider it a significant asset. Their mistake. As night fell over Westbrook, I sat by Sophia's window, watching the city lights shimmer against the darkness. My marriage, which I had believed was stable if not passionate, had been revealed as a facade. Jack had allowed, or worse, participated in, his family's scheme to appropriate my assets for his brother's failing business venture. But they had underestimated me. The deed restrictions, added years ago as a precautionary measure, now stood as my strongest defense against their fraud. My separate business accounts, maintained despite the Wilsons' dismissive attitudes, provided immediate financial security. Most importantly, they had misjudged my resolve. I was not the compliant daughter-in-law who would accept their explanation of family helping family as justification for theft and fraud. I was my grandmother's granddaughter, raised to be self-sufficient and strategic. My phone buzzed again, Jack this time with a voice message. Against my better judgment, I listened. "Emma, you're making a huge mistake involving lawyers and police. My parents were just trying to help Ryan, and they fully intended to replace the properties once his company turned around. They're devastated that you've escalated this into a criminal matter. Please come home so we can discuss this rationally, as a family." His voice held the same patronizing tone I had heard countless times at Wilson family gatherings when I had shared my business ideas or investment strategies. The tone that suggested I didn't quite understand how the real world worked, that I should defer to their superior knowledge and experience. I deleted the message without responding and turned off my phone. Tomorrow would bring legal battles, financial investigations, and the painful dismantling of 8 years of marriage. But as I prepared for sleep in Sophia's guest room, I felt something unexpected beneath the hurt and anger. Relief. The truth, however painful, had freed me from a relationship built on deception. The Wilsons had emptied accounts and stolen properties, thinking they were securing their son's future at my expense. What they didn't realize was that in doing so, they had inadvertently liberated me from their control, from their dismissive attitudes, from a marriage that had slowly eroded my sense of self. They didn't know about my deed restrictions, my separate business accounts, or the reserve of strength I had inherited from my grandmother. Their miscalculation would prove costly, not just financially, but in underestimating the woman they had welcomed into their family but never truly respected. As sleep finally claimed me in the early hours of the morning, one thought remained clear. They had taken what they believed was everything, not knowing that what truly mattered, my resilience, my foresight, my determination, remained firmly in my possession. This property deed restriction is about to become their worst nightmare. Morning light streamed through Sophia's guest room window, momentarily disorienting me as I woke in an unfamiliar bed. Then the events of yesterday crashed. Back, the unauthorized property transfers, the forged signatures, the systematic betrayal orchestrated by my husband and his family. I reached for my phone, which I had turned back on before falling asleep, and found 17 missed calls. 10 from Jack, 4 from Martha, 2 from Ryan, and 1 from an unknown number. I ignored them all and called Andrew Coleman instead. "Emma, I was just about to call you," my lawyer said, his voice energized despite the early hour. "The judge granted our emergency injunction. The property transfers have been temporarily frozen pending investigation." "What does that mean exactly?" I asked, sitting up and reaching for the notepad I'd placed on the nightstand. "It means the new buyers can't take possession or make any changes to the properties until the court reviews our evidence of fraud and the deed restrictions. It's the first step toward voiding the sales completely." Relief flooded through me. That's good news. What about the other financial issues, the credit cards, the equity line, the business loan guarantee? We've filed fraud reports on all of them. The credit bureaus have flagged everything, and we've initiated the process to remove the fraudulent accounts from your credit history. It will take time, but we have strong evidence of identity theft. I took a deep breath, focusing on practical next steps. I need to go to the house today to get my things while Jack's at work. I'd recommend having a police escort, Andrew advised. Given the scale of the fraud, we don't know what you might encounter. Detective Garcia said she can arrange for an officer to accompany you. The thought of needing police protection to enter my own home was surreal, but I agreed. We arranged for a police escort at 10 a.m., when Jack would definitely be at the office. After ending the call, I found Sophia in her kitchen, already dressed for work, but clearly planning to take the day off to help me. I've spoken with Andrew, I told her, accepting the mug of coffee she offered. We have a police escort to go to the house at 10. She nodded approvingly. Good. I wasn't comfortable with you going alone, even if Jack's not there. I keep thinking about what else they might have done, I admitted. What other financial traps might be waiting that I haven't discovered yet? Daniel is doing a complete forensic analysis of your finances, Sophia reminded me. And we've frozen everything we know about. Focus on getting your essential belongings today. As we finished our coffee, I checked my email and found a message from Olivia Parker, the real estate agent who had helped me acquire my investment properties. The subject line read, Urgent, Unauthorized Property Listings. Emma, I just learned your Pine Valley apartment complex and 3 other properties have been listed and sold without my involvement. As your agent of record, this raised immediate red flags. The transactions appear to have been handled by Wilson Realty Associates. Please contact me as soon as possible. Wilson Realty Associates, Martha Wilson's company. Another piece of the puzzle clicked into place. My mother-in-law had used her own real estate firm to facilitate the fraudulent sales, likely bypassing standard due diligence processes that would have revealed the deed restrictions. I forwarded the email to Andrew, adding this new information to the growing evidence of deliberate fraud. At precisely 10 a.m., Detective Garcia arrived at Sophia's apartment building, accompanied by a uniformed officer named Ramirez. She updated us on the investigation as we drove to Lakeside Heights. We've interviewed 2 of the property buyers, she explained. Both claim they were assured by Martha Wilson that she had full authority to sell the properties on your behalf. She apparently presented documents showing you had authorized her to act as your agent. I never signed any such documents, I said firmly. We know. The signatures are clear forgeries, similar to those on the transfer deeds. The fraud unit is building a comprehensive case. As we turned onto my street, anxiety tightened my chest. The colonial-style house Jack and I had purchased 3 years ago came into view, its familiar facade now seeming like a stage set for a life that had been partially illusory. Jack's car isn't here, I noted with relief as we pulled into the driveway. We'll still proceed with caution, Detective Garcia advised. Officer Ramirez will enter first to ensure the premises are secure. After confirming the house was empty, we entered. Nothing appeared immediately different in the foyer or living room, but when I reached our home office, I found clear evidence of disturbance. Filing cabinets stood open, with empty folders scattered across the desk. The locked drawer where I kept important documents had been forced open. They were looking for something specific, Detective Garcia observed, carefully, photographing the scene without touching anything. Property deeds, I realized. The original documents with the restriction clauses. I kept copies here, but the originals are in my safe deposit box at First Meridian Trust. A quick check confirmed my suspicion. The folder labeled Property. Deeds was empty, though I knew I had placed copies there. I moved quickly through the house, gathering essential clothing, personal items, and my laptop. In the master bedroom, I noticed several pieces of my jewelry were missing from my dresser box, including a sapphire pendant my grandmother had given me. You should document everything that's missing, Detective Garcia advised, continuing to take photographs. It strengthens the case for premeditated theft. In the kitchen, I found a notepad by the phone with Jack's handwriting. Meet Ryan and parents. Irvwer 7. Property O transfer complete. Explain to E. The casual notation of their plan to explain away the theft of my properties after the fact sent a wave of cold anger through me. I photographed the notepad before carefully packing my essential belongings. There wasn't much I wanted to take: clothes, personal documents, a few sentimental items. The furniture, the artwork on the walls, the appliances we had selected together, all of it felt tainted now. As I was checking the spare bedroom for any remaining items I might need, my phone rang with Jack's number. After a moment's hesitation, I answered and put it on speaker so Detective Garcia could hear. "Emma, where are you? I came home for lunch and you're not here. We need to talk about this misunderstanding with the properties." "Misunderstanding?" I repeated, my voice steady despite the anger coursing through me. "You and your family forged my signature, sold my properties without consent, opened fraudulent credit accounts in my name, and made me a guarantor for Ryan's business loans, all without my knowledge or permission." "That's not a misunderstanding, Jack. It's criminal fraud." There was a moment of silence before he responded, his tone shifting from concerned to coldly pragmatic. "My parents were trying to help Ryan save his company. The plan was always to replace your properties once Fusion Tech turned around. Nobody expected you to involve the police and create this legal nightmare." "The legal nightmare began when you decided to steal from me," I replied. "The properties have been frozen by court order and the fraud investigation is underway. I'm at the house now with police, gathering my belongings." "You're with police? In our home?" His voice rose with indignation. "Emma, this is insane. We're family. Families help each other." "Families don't commit identity theft against each other," I countered. "Don't come home, Jack. I'm taking what belongs to me, and then I won't be back. You can't just walk away from our marriage over a financial disagreement." Detective Garcia stepped forward. "Mr. Mitchell, this is Detective Garcia with the Westbrook Police. This is not a financial disagreement. It's a criminal investigation into multiple counts of fraud, forgery, and identity theft. I suggest you contact an attorney immediately." Jack hung up without another word. We finished gathering my belongings in tense silence. As we loaded everything into Sophia's car, our elderly neighbor Mrs. Patel approached from her adjoining property. "Emma, dear, is everything all right? I saw the police car and got worried." I hesitated, unsure how much to reveal, but Sophia answered smoothly. "Just a precautionary measure while Emma collects some things, Mrs. Patel. Nothing to worry about." "Well, I hope you'll be back soon. I was concerned when I saw those people removing items from your house yesterday." My attention snapped to her. "What people, Mrs. Patel?" "A blonde woman and two men. They brought a small moving truck and took quite a few things. I assumed you knew about it, though it did seem odd they came while you were away." Detective Garcia immediately showed Mrs. Patel her badge. "Ma'am, do you remember what time this was and what specifically they removed from the house?" "It was around noon. They took what looked like artwork, some electronics, and several boxes. One of the men called the woman Martha. I remember thinking it was the same name as George Washington's wife." She smiled apologetically. "I have an interest in historical trivia. Martha Wilson. My mother-in-law had been removing valuables from my home even as I discovered the property theft." Detective Garcia took Mrs. Patel's formal statement while Officer Ramirez checked the house again, this time noting additional missing items: our large television, Jack's expensive sound system, the antique clock from the mantel, and several pieces of artwork. "They're liquidating assets," Sophia murmured as we watched the officers document the new evidence. "Taking anything of value they can easily transport and sell." "But why?" I wondered. If Ryan's business needed capital, surely Harold could have provided it. The Wilsons have substantial wealth of their own. "Maybe not anymore," Sophia suggested. Ryan's company might have already burned through their available cash, or perhaps they've overextended themselves in other ways. The thought was unsettling. If the Wilsons were in financial trouble severe enough to risk criminal charges by stealing my properties, what else might they be desperate enough to do? As we prepared to leave, I took one last look at the house Jack and I had shared. Despite its comfortable furnishings and tasteful decor, much of which I had selected with my designer's eye, it had never fully felt like my home. The Wilson family influence had always hovered in the background, from the location in Lakeside Heights, chosen for its proximity to Harold and Martha, to the formal dining room we rarely used, but that Martha had insisted was essential for proper entertaining. I closed the door without regret and didn't look back. At Sophia's suggestion, we drove directly to First Meridian Trust to check my safe deposit box. Relief flooded through me when the bank manager confirmed no one had accessed it since my last visit 6 months ago. Inside, I found the original property deeds with the restriction clauses intact, my grandmother's will, and several pieces of valuable jewelry I had inherited from her, items I had wisely kept separate from our home. "Smart move," Sophia commented as we secured the documents in her briefcase. "These originals will be crucial for the legal proceedings." Our next stop was Evergreen Design Studio, my interior design firm in downtown Westbrook. I needed to check on operations and ensure the business was secure from Jack's potential interference. The familiar space, with its wall of fabric samples, material swatches, and design portfolios, provided a momentary sense of normalcy in the chaos my personal life had become. My assistant Chelsea looked up in surprise as we entered. "Emma, I thought you were taking time off this week for your anniversary trip." Anniversary trip? Jack and I had planned a weekend getaway to celebrate our 8th anniversary, but it was scheduled for next month, not this week. "There's no anniversary trip," I said, confusion evident in my voice. "Who told you that?" "Jack called yesterday and said you were both taking a surprise vacation. He asked me to reschedule all your client appointments for the next 2 weeks." The implications chilled me. Jack had been planning to keep me away from my business for 2 weeks, perhaps hoping I wouldn't notice the property transfers until it was too late to contest them effectively. Or worse, planning to access my business accounts while I was supposedly unavailable. "Chelsea, I need you to revoke all of Jack's access codes to the studio immediately," I instructed. "And contact the bank to remove him as an authorized person on any business accounts." Her eyes widened. "Is everything okay, Emma?" "No, but it will be. I'll explain everything later, but right now I need to secure the business." While Chelsea made the necessary calls, I checked the business accounts online and was relieved to find them untouched. Unlike my investment properties, which Jack had known about in detail, he had shown little interest in the day-to-day operations of Evergreen Design Studio. The business accounts, client contracts, and intellectual property appeared to be safe. As Chelsea worked on changing security protocols, Daniel Kim arrived at the studio, his usually impeccable appearance slightly rumpled, suggesting he had been working through the night on my financial situation. "I've completed the forensic analysis of your accounts," he said without preamble. "It's worse than we initially thought. The Wilsons have been systematically accessing your finances for nearly a year." He opened his laptop and showed me a timeline of unauthorized transactions, beginning with small withdrawals from seldom-used accounts and escalating to the recent property transfers. "They were testing boundaries," Daniel explained, "starting with amounts they thought you wouldn't notice, then gradually increasing their theft when they confirmed you weren't monitoring these accounts closely." "How did they gain access?" Sophia asked, looking over my shoulder at the disturbing pattern of financial infiltration. "Multiple methods. Jack had legitimate access to some accounts as your spouse. For others, they used forged documents or identity theft. The property transfers were the culmination of a long-term strategy, not an impulsive act." I felt physically ill. The betrayal had been unfolding for months while I remained oblivious, trusting my husband and his family. "The good news," Daniel continued, his tone softening slightly, "is that the deed restrictions you placed on the properties provide a strong legal basis for voiding the transfers. The title company has already acknowledged they failed to perform proper due diligence, likely due to pressure from Martha Wilson's realty firm. He pointed to an email exchange he had obtained through the fraud investigation, showing Martha instructing her employees to expedite the sales without unnecessary complications. This is explicit evidence of intent to defraud, he noted. Martha knew about the deed restrictions and deliberately concealed them from the buyers. Chelsea returned from making the security calls, her expression concerned. All access codes have been changed, and Jack has been removed from the business accounts. But Emma, there's something else you should know. Jack came to the studio last week when you were at the client site in Pine Valley. He was in your office for almost an hour. I immediately went to my private office and began checking drawers and files. Nothing obvious was missing, but my computer had been moved slightly from its usual position. I booted it up and checked the login history, finding an unauthorized access from 3 days ago, when I had been at a design conference in the neighboring city. He's been monitoring my emails, I realized, checking the access logs, forwarding copies to an external account. Sophia, who had followed me into the office, swore under her breath. That's how they knew about your property management company's scheduling and when you wouldn't be checking certain accounts. They had inside information about your movements and financial activities. The invasion of privacy felt almost more violating than the financial theft. Jack had been surveilling my professional communications, using my own schedule against me to coordinate their fraud. We need to change all your passwords and set up enhanced security measures, Daniel advised. Already working on my computer. 2-factor authentication on everything, new email accounts, the works. While Daniel secured my digital presence, I called Andrew to update him on our discoveries. He was particularly interested in Mrs. Patel's witness statement about Martha, removing items from our home. That's conversion of property on top of the fraud charges, he explained. I'll add it to our filing. The police should be able to get a search warrant for the Wilsons' home to look for your belongings. By late afternoon, we had secured my business, documented the additional evidence, and established a comprehensive security protocol. I felt exhausted, but strangely empowered. Each protective measure, each piece of evidence we gathered, strengthened my position against the Wilson scheme. We were preparing to leave the studio when my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. I almost ignored it, but something prompted me to answer. Is this Emma Mitchell? A woman's voice asked. Yes. Who's calling? My name is Lisa Davidson. I recently purchased property in Pine Valley Estates from Wilson Realty Associates. I've just been informed there's a legal dispute regarding the sale, and I wanted to speak with you directly. One of the buyers of my properties. I put the call on speaker and signaled to Sophia to record the conversation. Ms. Davidson, I appreciate your call, but I should inform you that there's an ongoing fraud investigation regarding those properties. My lawyer should be your primary contact. I understand, and I've already spoken with my own attorney. What concerns me is that Martha Wilson personally assured me you had authorized the sale. She showed me documents with your signature and said you were using the proceeds to invest in a technology venture. Those documents were forged, I stated clearly. I never authorized any sale of my properties, and my signature was falsified. I've filed criminal charges regarding the fraud. There was a pause before she responded. That's what the police? Detective suggested when she contacted me. I'm calling because I want to cooperate with the investigation. Martha Wilson gave me a personal guarantee that bypassed some of the normal purchase protections, which seemed unusual but advantageous at the time. Now I realize I may have been manipulated into participating in a fraudulent transaction. This was unexpected, a buyer proactively reaching out to cooperate. I appreciate your honesty, Ms. Davidson. My lawyer is Andrew Coleman at Coleman and Associates. If you could share whatever documentation and information you have with him, it would be extremely helpful. I will. And Ms. Mitchell, I'm sorry this happened to you. It's a terrible betrayal. After the call ended, Sophia looked at me with newfound optimism. This is huge, Emma. A cooperative buyer who can testify about Martha's deceptive practices strengthens our case enormously. I nodded, feeling a small measure of vindication. The Wilsons had been so confident in their scheme that they had left a trail of evidence and witnesses. Their arrogance would be their undoing. As we left Evergreen Design Studio, my phone buzzed with a text from Jack. My parents' lawyer says your deed restrictions won't hold up. Stop making this worse than it needs to be. We can still fix this as a family. I showed the message to Sophia, who scoffed. They're bluffing. Those restrictions were properly filed and ironclad. Andrew had them reviewed by 3 separate real estate attorneys before implementation. I know, I replied, deleting the message without responding. Jack always underestimated me. The whole family did. They saw my properties as easy targets because they never respected my business acumen. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows as we drove back to Sophia's apartment. Despite the emotional and physical exhaustion of the day, I felt a growing sense of resolve. The Wilsons had orchestrated an elaborate fraud to appropriate my assets, but they had miscalculated on multiple fronts. The legal protections I had put in place, the evidence trail they had created, and most significantly, my determination to fight back. Daniel met us at Sophia's apartment with additional updates. The forensic accountant I've been working with has traced the money from your property sales, he reported. As we suspected, it went directly to Fusion Tech Solutions, but from there, most of it was immediately transferred to cover existing debts, including several high-interest loans in Ryan's name. How much debt are we talking about? I asked. Over $2 million, Daniel replied grimly. Your properties were essentially sold to pay off Ryan's creditors, not to fund new business operations. So the company isn't just failing. It's already functionally bankrupt, Sophia observed. Daniel nodded. Based on the financial records we've obtained, Fusion Tech has been insolvent for at least 6 months. The Wilsons have been keeping it artificially alive by injecting capital, and when they ran out of their own resources, they came after mine, I finished. The picture was becoming clearer. The Wilsons, having depleted their own liquid assets supporting Ryan's failing business, had turned to my properties as a last-ditch source of capital. Jack, caught between loyalty to his parents and his duty to me, had chosen his family of origin, helping them steal from me rather than confronting the reality of his brother's business failure. There's something else, Daniel added, his expression troubled. I found evidence that Jack has been diverting his own income for months, reducing his retirement contributions, taking loans against his insurance policies, even selling investments at a loss. Everything has been flowing to Fusion Tech. He's sacrificed his own financial future as well, I murmured, feeling an unwelcome twinge of pity for the man who had betrayed me. Don't, Sophia said sharply, reading my expression. Don't make excuses for him, Emma. Jack made his choices. He could have come to you honestly about his brother's situation. Instead, he participated in a conspiracy to defraud you. She was right. Whatever financial pressure the Wilsons faced, whatever family loyalty Jack felt, nothing justified the systematic theft and fraud they had perpetrated against me. As evening fell, Andrew called with an update that solidified our legal position. The judge has reviewed our preliminary evidence and expanded the emergency injunction. All property transfers are officially voided pending full investigation, and the Wilsons are prohibited from accessing or transferring any additional assets that might be subject to recovery claims. What does that mean exactly? I asked. It means your properties legally revert to your ownership immediately, and the Wilsons can't sell or transfer any of their own assets until the court determines what compensation you're entitled to for damages. It was the first unequivocally positive development since discovering the fraud. My properties, the apartment complex and 3 single-family homes I had carefully acquired and maintained, would be returned to me. What about the buyers? I asked, thinking of Lisa Davidson and others who had purchased the properties in good faith. They'll have claims against Martha's realty company and the title company that failed to identify the deed restrictions, Andrew explained. The court has already determined they were victims of misrepresentation, which shields them from financial liability while still allowing your properties to be returned. After ending the call, I sat quietly by Sophia's window, watching the city lights emerge against the darkening sky. The day had been a roller coaster of revelations, each more disturbing than the last, yet I felt strangely at peace. The initial shock had given way to strategic action, and the actions were yielding results. The Wilson family had seen me as an easy target, a compliant daughter-in-law who would accept their explanation of family helping family as justification for theft. They had dismissed my business acumen, underestimated my legal preparations, and misjudged my resolve. Their miscalculation would cost them dearly, not just in legal consequences and financial restitution, but in the loss of the relationship they had exploited. Whatever happened next, I would never again be under their influence or control. My phone buzzed with another text from Jack. "Emma, please. My parents are frantic. The police came with a search warrant. This is tearing our family apart." I stared at the message, struck by the irony of his concern for his family now, when he had shown no such concern for me, his wife, supposedly his closest family, while participating in the theft of my assets. For the first time since discovering the betrayal, I responded, "The family was torn apart when you decided to steal from me. Don't contact me again except through my lawyer." I blocked his number and turned back to the window, feeling lighter for having established that boundary. The Wilsons had taken what they thought was everything, not knowing that what truly mattered, my resilience, my legal protections, my support network, and my determination, remained firmly in my possession. They had emptied accounts and stolen properties, thinking they were securing their son's future at my expense. Instead, they had set in motion their own downfall. The legal proceedings moved with unexpected speed over the next 2 weeks. Andrew had assembled a team of attorneys specializing in real estate fraud, identity theft, and financial crimes. The evidence against the Wilson family was overwhelming, strengthened by Lisa Davidson and 2 other property buyers who came forward with similar accounts of Martha Wilson's deceptive sales tactics. I settled into a temporary routine at Sophia's apartment, working remotely for Evergreen Design Studio, and attending regular meetings with the legal team. The initial shock had given way to a steady determination to reclaim what was mine and hold the Wilsons accountable for their actions. The district attorney has formally charged Harold, Martha, and Ryan Wilson with multiple counts of fraud, forgery, and identity theft, Andrew informed me during our morning briefing. Jack is facing separate charges as an accomplice, though his attorney has approached us about a potential cooperation agreement. "What kind of agreement?" I asked, surprised that Jack would turn against his family. "He's offering to provide detailed testimony about how the scheme was planned and executed, particularly his parents' and brothers' roles, in exchange for reduced charges." The thought of Jack betraying his family as easily as he had betrayed me was grimly ironic but unsurprising. He had always prioritized self-preservation. "What's your recommendation?" I asked. Andrew considered for a moment. His testimony would strengthen the criminal case, particularly regarding premeditation and intent. The evidence we have is already substantial, but Jack's insider perspective could ensure maximum penalties. And what would he get in return? Likely probation instead of jail time, restitution requirements, and a felony record that would be subject to potential expungement after completion of all court-ordered obligations. I thought about it carefully. The rational choice was clear. Jack's testimony would help secure justice against the primary architects of the fraud. Yet something in me resisted the idea of offering him any leniency. "I need time to think about," I finally said. Andrew nodded understandingly. "There's no rush. The DA has given us until Friday to respond. As he gathered his documents, another thought occurred to me. Have they found any of the items taken from the house? My grandmother's sapphire pendant? Not yet, but the police executed additional search warrants yesterday at 3 storage facilities registered to Ryan Wilson. They're still inventorying what they found. After Andrew left, I focused on work, reviewing design proposals for a new commercial client. A welcome distraction from the ongoing legal battles. Chelsea had been managing client relationships admirably during my partial absence, and the business continued to thrive despite the chaos in my personal life. My phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. Just received the court-ordered financial disclosures from the Wilsons. Need to meet ASAP. Lunch? We arranged to meet at a small cafe near his office. When I arrived, Daniel was already seated at a corner table, multiple folders spread before him, his expression grave. What is it? I asked, sliding into the seat across from him. The financial situation is far worse than we thought, he said, opening the topmost folder. The Wilsons are effectively bankrupt. Harold remortgaged their primary residence to the maximum last year. They've liquidated most of their investment accounts. Martha's real estate firm has been operating at a loss for 3 years, sustained only by personal cash infusions. But they were always so... I struggled to find the right word. Ostentatious? Daniel suggested. It was mostly facade. Designer clothes, country club memberships, luxury cars, all maintained through increasing debt and creative accounting. He showed me spreadsheets detailing the Wilson family finances, revealing a shocking pattern of financial mismanagement spanning years. And Ryan's company? I asked. Fusion Tech Solutions never had a viable business model. It burned through over $4 million in 5 years without ever turning a profit. Your properties were essentially sold to pay off high-interest loans that were keeping creditors at bay. I absorbed this information slowly. The Wilsons, who had always projected such affluence and financial acumen, who had dismissed my modest real estate investments as amateur endeavors, had been living beyond their means for years while systematically depleting their assets. What does this mean for recovery? I asked, getting to the practical implications. Daniel sighed. It complicates things. The good news is that your properties have been legally returned to you through the court order voiding the fraudulent sales. But recovering additional damages for the identity theft, credit fraud, stolen items will be challenging given their financial state. I'm not concerned about additional damages, I said, surprising myself with the realization as I spoke. Having my properties back and seeing justice served is enough. Daniel studied me thoughtfully. That's generous, considering what they put you through. It's not generosity, it's pragmatism. I want to focus on rebuilding my life, not chasing compensation from people who can't pay it. Our food arrived, and we shifted to discussing the status of my restored properties. The management company I had contracted with before the fraud had maintained operations throughout the legal proceedings, ensuring rental income continued to flow. The title company has agreed to compensate the buyers who purchased your properties, Daniel explained. Their negligence in not identifying the deed restrictions makes them liable for the failed transactions. What about Martha's realty company? I asked. They deliberately concealed the restrictions. Wilson Realty Associates is facing multiple lawsuits and regulatory investigations. Their professional liability insurance will likely cover some claims, but the company itself appears headed for dissolution. The systematic dismantling of the Wilson family's financial empire, built partly on appearance and partly on increasingly desperate maneuvers, was occurring with remarkable speed. As we finished lunch, my phone rang with an unknown number. I almost ignored it, wary of more unwanted contact from the Wilsons, but decided to answer. Emma Mitchell? A man's voice asked. Yes, who's calling? This is Detective Ramirez. We've recovered some items from the storage units registered to Ryan Wilson that we believe belong to you. Would you be available to come to the station to identify them? Yes, absolutely. When would be convenient? This afternoon, if possible. We'd like to move forward with the property theft charges. I agreed to meet him at 3 p.m. and ended the call, a small flutter of hope rising at the possibility of recovering my grandmother's pendant. After lunch, I returned to Sophia's apartment to prepare for the police station visit. As I changed clothes, my phone buzzed with an email notification from my real estate management company. The subject line caught my attention immediately. Unexpected property inspection findings. The email detailed a routine inspection of the Pine Valley apartment complex, my largest investment property, which had revealed significant unreported damage to 2 units, apparently occurring during the brief period when the property was under disputed ownership. The units appear to have been hastily renovated with substandard materials, the property manager wrote. Walls were removed without proper permits or structural considerations, electrical work was done that doesn't meet code, and plumbing has been significantly altered, resulting in water damage to surrounding units. Photos attached to the email showed shocking changes. Load-bearing walls knocked out, exposed wiring hanging from ceilings, bathroom fixtures removed and not properly capped. What had once been well-maintained code-compliant rental units were now dangerous, uninhabitable spaces requiring extensive repairs. I forwarded the email to Andrew with a brief note. More evidence of the Wilsons' actions during the fraudulent ownership period. Please add to the case file. His response came quickly. This strengthens our claim for additional damages. The cost of repairs will be added to the restitution demand. At 3 p.m. sharp, I arrived at the Westbrook Police Station, where Detective Ramirez met me in the lobby and escorted me to a conference room. On the table lay several items I recognized immediately. My laptop that had been in the home office, 3 small pieces of artwork from the living room, and a jewelry box containing miscellaneous pieces, including, to my immense relief, my grandmother's sapphire pendant. We found these items in a storage unit rented by Ryan Wilson 2 weeks ago, Detective Ramirez explained. There were also several electronics and furniture pieces we believe came from your residence. I confirmed the ownership of each item, providing original purchase documentation for the electronics and artwork from my phone records. What happens to these items now? I asked, running my fingers over the sapphire pendant, the one item I truly cared about recovering. You can take the jewelry today, as it's been properly documented and photographed. The other items need to remain in evidence until the trial, but you can claim them afterward. As I secured the pendant around my neck, Detective Ramirez shared an update on the investigation. We've obtained security footage from the storage facility showing Martha and Ryan Wilson moving these items 2 days after you discovered the property fraud. The timing suggests they were deliberately hiding assets they knew would be subject to recovery. Have they said anything about why they did all this? I asked, curious about what justification the Wilsons could possibly offer for their actions. Ryan Wilson has been consistently claiming the property transfers were legitimate investments in his company, with returns promised to you. Martha Wilson maintains she had verbal authorization to act as your agent. Harold Wilson initially claimed no direct involvement but has since stopped commenting on advice of counsel. And Jack? Detective Ramirez's expression shifted slightly. Jack Mitchell has been more forthcoming since the DA approached him about a potential cooperation agreement. He's provided detailed accounts of planning meetings where the property transfers were discussed, including explicit acknowledgement that you had not and would not consent to the sales. The confirmation of premeditation, that the Wilsons had specifically discussed my likely refusal and planned to proceed regardless, strengthened my resolve regarding Jack's cooperation agreement. After completing the necessary paperwork for the recovered items, I left the police station and called Andrew. I've made a decision about Jack's offer to testify. I'll support the cooperation agreement on one condition: full disclosure. He needs to provide complete information about every aspect of the fraud, every conversation, every plan, every action taken. No selective memory or minimizing his role. I'll convey that to the DA immediately, Andrew replied. Are you sure about this? It would be perfectly understandable if you preferred to see him face the same penalties as his family. This isn't about forgiveness, I clarified. It's about ensuring the full truth comes to light. Jack's testimony can help ensure the Wilsons are held fully accountable, and that's worth more to me than seeing him serve jail time. After ending the call, I walked through the park near the police station, the late afternoon sun filtering through the trees. The sapphire pendant felt warm against my skin, a tangible connection to my grandmother and her wisdom that had protected me even in her absence. The deed restrictions she had encouraged me to add to each property had proven to be my financial salvation. Without them, I might have faced years of litigation with uncertain outcomes. Instead, the properties had been returned to me within weeks, the fraud clearly established by the violation of those carefully worded clauses. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. Martha Wilson just appeared on the local news proclaiming their innocence. Apparently they're trying their case in the court of public opinion now. I found a bench and quickly located the news clip online. Martha Wilson, impeccably dressed as always in a conservative blue suit, stood outside the courthouse flanked by an attorney I didn't recognize. "These allegations against my family are completely unfounded," she declared, her voice steady, but her eyes betraying tension. "We were simply helping our daughter-in-law invest in a promising business opportunity with guaranteed returns. The properties were never stolen. They were transferred with full understanding that they would generate significant profits for everyone involved. These criminal charges are the result of a misunderstanding that has been blown wildly out of proportion." The reporter asked about the forged signatures and deed restrictions, which Martha dismissed with a practiced wave. There were administrative oversights in the paperwork, certainly, but nothing criminal. As for these supposed deed restrictions, they were never properly disclosed during any of our discussions about the investments. The blatant lies were breathtaking in their audacity. I forwarded the clip to Andrew, who responded with a single line. "Desperate people make desperate claims. The evidence speaks for itself." He was right, of course. No amount of public posturing could override the documented evidence of forgery, fraud, and theft. Still, the Wilsons' willingness to publicly misrepresent the situation, to cast themselves as well-meaning family members rather than calculated criminals, was disturbing. I returned to Sophia's apartment to find her waiting with takeout and a sympathetic expression. "I saw the news clip. You okay?" "Surprisingly, yes," I replied, setting my bag down and joining her at the small dining table. "Their lies don't have the power to hurt me anymore." "Good," she said firmly, "because Martha's performance was Oscar-worthy in its delusion. The interesting thing is, I almost believe she's convinced herself," I mused, serving myself some of the Thai food Sophia had ordered. In her mind, they probably were helping me by investing my assets in Ryan's company, regardless of whether I wanted that help. "The Wilson family specializes in self-serving narratives," Sophia agreed. "Remember last Thanksgiving when Harold E. spent an hour explaining why his investment strategy was infallible, even though their portfolio had underperformed the market 3 years running?" The memory brought an unexpected smile. The Wilson family gatherings had always featured Harold's financial pronouncements, Martha's social orchestrations, and Ryan's grandiose business projections, all delivered with absolute certainty despite frequently proving incorrect. "In retrospect, there were so many warning signs," I acknowledged. "The way they dismissed my business, their insistence on handling major financial decisions, their constant praise of Ryan's visionary business approach despite its obvious flaws." "Hindsight is illuminating," Sophia agreed. "But don't blame yourself for not seeing through them sooner. They were your family. Trust is natural." We ate in companionable silence for a few minutes before Sophia spoke again. "Have you thought about where you'll live once this is all settled? You could stay here as long as you need, but I know you'll want your own space eventually." The question caught me off guard. I had been so focused on the legal battles and recovering my properties that I hadn't given much thought to my personal living situation beyond the immediate arrangement at Sophia's. "I don't want to go back to the lakeside. Heights house," I said with certainty. "Too many memories, too much Wilson family influence in that neighborhood." "You could sell it and buy something that's completely yours," Sophia suggested. "Maybe downtown near the studio? You've always said you'd love a loft in the arts district." The idea was appealing, a fresh start in a space that had no connection to my married life or the Wilsons. "I think I might," I agreed. "Once the divorce is finalized and ownership of the house is settled." "Have you heard anything about the divorce proceedings?" I shook my head. "Andrew filed the petition citing fraud and abandonment, but with everything else happening, it hasn't been the priority. Jack hasn't contested it, at least." "Small mercies," Sophia muttered. After dinner, I checked my email and found a message from Chelsea at Evergreen Design Studio. Subject: Urgent. Potential new client, Maple Ridge Development Group. The email explained that Maple Ridge, one of the largest property development companies in the region, had requested a meeting to discuss interior design services for their new luxury apartment complex downtown. It would be the biggest commercial contract in Evergreen's history if secured. "They specifically requested you for the initial consultation," Chelsea wrote. "Apparently, the CEO was impressed by your work on the Westbrook Community Center last year. Meeting scheduled for tomorrow at 10 a.m. if you can make it." I replied immediately, confirming my availability. This was exactly the type of opportunity I needed. A major project to focus my creative energy on, a chance to expand my business in a significant way, and a welcome distraction from the ongoing legal drama. The next morning, I dressed with particular care for the Maple Ridge meeting, selecting a tailored navy suit that projected professional confidence. Sophia helped me prepare my portfolio, highlighting commercial projects that showcased my ability to handle large-scale design work. "You're going to nail this," she assured me as I gathered my materials. "Focus on your expertise and let everything else fade into the background for a few hours." The Maple Ridge Development Group occupied the top 3 floors of a sleek glass tower in downtown Westbrook. I was escorted to a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows offering spectacular views of the city skyline. The CEO, Elaine Thornton, greeted me with a firm handshake and genuine warmth. "Emma Mitchell, I've been following your work since the Westbrook Community Center. Your ability to blend functionality with distinctive aesthetic elements is exactly what we're looking for in our new development." For the next 2 hours, I was blissfully immersed in a world of design concepts, material selections, and budget considerations, a realm where my expertise was valued and my professional judgment respected. The meeting concluded with a tentative agreement for Evergreen Design Studio to handle the interior design for the entire development, pending final contract negotiations. "We'll send over the preliminary contract by end of week," Elaine confirmed as she walked me to the elevator. "This is the first of several projects we have planned for the downtown revitalization, Ms. Mitchell. If all goes well, this could be the beginning of a long-term partnership." The potential for a sustained relationship with a major developer, like Maple Ridge, was transformative for my business. As I left the building, I felt a renewed sense of purpose and possibility. Despite the Wilsons' attempts to undermine my financial security, my professional reputation and abilities remained intact. Assets they couldn't touch or diminish. Back at Sophia's apartment, I found a package waiting from Andrew's office. Inside was a formal notice from the court confirming that all 4 properties had been legally restored to my ownership, with the deed restrictions explicitly affirmed as valid and binding. Attached was a summary of the property inspections, including detailed estimates for repairs to the damaged apartment units. The total estimated cost for restoring the Pine Valley apartments to code-compliant condition was substantial, $187,000. Under normal circumstances, such an unexpected expense would have been deeply concerning. But after nearly losing the properties, Entirely, the repair costs felt manageable, a problem I could solve through conventional financing if necessary. I called the property management company to authorize emergency repairs addressing the most critical safety issues, then contacted my insurance provider to determine what portion of the damage might be covered under my policy. The representative was surprisingly optimistic after hearing the circumstances. Since the damage occurred during a period of fraudulent ownership and has been documented as part of a criminal case, our Special Investigations Unit will likely approve coverage under your policy's crime protection clause, she explained. We'll need copies of the police reports and court documents, of course. By late afternoon, I had set in motion the process of reclaiming and restoring my investment properties, both legally and physically. The stolen assets were being returned, the damage assessed and addressed, and the path forward was becoming clearer. My phone rang with Andrew's number. "Good news," he said without preamble. "Jack has agreed to your terms for the cooperation agreement. Full disclosure, no minimizing his role. The DA is satisfied with the arrangement and believes his testimony will significantly strengthen the case against Harold, Martha, and Ryan." "When will he provide his statement?" I asked. "He's meeting with prosecutors tomorrow morning. They'll take his formal deposition, which will then be shared with the defense attorneys as part of discovery." "Will I get to see it?" "Yes. We'll receive a copy as the victim's representatives. I should have it for you by tomorrow afternoon." After ending the call, I felt a complex mixture of emotions about Jack's cooperation. There was no satisfaction in his betrayal of his family, even though they had all betrayed me first. No pleasure in imagining the Wilsons' reaction to learning their son and brother had turned against them to save himself. Yet I couldn't deny the practical value of his testimony in ensuring justice was served. Sophia returned from work and found me sitting by the window, lost in thought. "Everything okay? You look troubled." I shared the update about Jack's cooperation agreement and my conflicted feelings about it. "It's natural to feel ambivalent," she assured me. "You were married to him for 8 years. Despite everything, there's history there." "It's not that I care about him anymore," I clarified. "It's more that I'm disappointed in the whole situation, that my marriage was to someone capable of such calculating betrayal, that his family was so willing to steal from me that he's now willing to turn on them to protect himself. The Wilsons created this situation, Emma, not you. Their choices led to these consequences." She was right, of course. The Wilsons' actions, the fraud, the theft, the lies, had set these events in motion. Jack's decision to cooperate with prosecutors was simply the latest in a series of self-serving choices he had made. That evening, I declined Sophia's dinner invitation, needing some time alone to process the day's developments. I ordered delivery and spent the evening reviewing the preliminary contract from Maple Ridge Development Group, focusing my mind on the creative possibilities of the project rather than the ongoing legal battles. Just before midnight, as I was preparing for bed, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Martha Wilson. We need to talk privately. I can explain everything. Please call me at this number tomorrow. No lawyers." I stared at the message, shocked by Martha's audacity in contacting me directly, despite the restraining order that prohibited any communication from the Wilson family. This was yet another violation to add to the growing list. Without responding, I forwarded the message to Andrew and Detective Garcia, noting the violation of the restraining order. Then I blocked the number and turned off my phone. Martha's attempt to establish direct contact was likely a desperate move to undermine the legal proceedings, perhaps hoping to persuade me to drop charges or accept some nominal settlement. The timing, coming just after Jack had agreed to cooperate with prosecutors, suggested the Wilsons were feeling the walls closing in. As I drifted towards sleep, I found myself thinking about the deed restrictions that had proven so crucial to recovering my properties. My grandmother's insistence on that additional layer of protection had seemed excessive at the time, a precaution against unlikely scenarios. Now it appeared almost prescient, as if she had somehow anticipated that my assets might one day be targeted by those I trusted. Always protect what's yours, Emma, she had told me. People change, circumstances change, but good planning remains your best defense. Those words had guided my decision to add the deed restrictions, to maintain separate business accounts, to keep certain assets completely independent from my marriage. Without realizing it, I had been preparing for this crisis long before it arrived. The Wilsons had seen my properties as easy targets, my financial independence as an obstacle to be overcome in service of their own interests. They had assumed I would be easy to manipulate, to deceive, to control. Their fundamental miscalculation wasn't just about the legal protections I had put in place. It was about me, my character, my resolve, my unwillingness to be victimized without fighting back. As sleep finally claimed me, one thought remained clear. They had tried to take everything, not knowing that the most valuable assets I possessed, resilience, foresight, determination, were never within their reach at all. 1 year after discovering the unauthorized property transfers, I stood in my completed loft, hosting the official opening reception for Evergreen Design Studios' new headquarters. The renovation had transformed not just my living space, but the entire floor below into a showcase for my design philosophy. Industrial elements softened with natural materials, functionality enhanced by beauty, traditional craftsmanship complemented by modern innovation. "This is spectacular, Emma," Elaine Thornton commented, the CEO of Maple Ridge Development Group, circling the central display area where material samples, design boards, and 3D renderings demonstrated our creative process. "I knew you had vision, but seeing how you've transformed this space confirms we made the right choice partnering with you." The Maple Ridge project had been completed ahead of schedule and under budget, with every unit in the luxury complex leased before construction was fully finished. The success had led to 2 additional contracts with Maple Ridge and inquiries from competing developers eager to capture the distinctive aesthetic that was becoming Evergreen's signature. "Thank you for taking a chance on us," I replied, genuinely, grateful for the opportunity that had come at such a pivotal moment in my professional and personal life. "Your project helped us level up in every aspect of our operation." Sophia approached, champagne glass in hand, having just finished giving Daniel and Andrew a tour of the new conference facilities. "The journalists from Design Quarterly just arrived. They're setting up for the interview in your office." The national publication had requested a feature on Evergreen's rapid expansion and innovative approach to commercial design. The exposure would further cement our position as a leading studio in the region, potentially opening doors to projects beyond Westbrook. "I'll be right there," I assured her, excusing myself from Elaine with a promise to continue our conversation about upcoming development opportunities. My office occupied the corner of the studio space, with windows overlooking the arts district and the river beyond. I had designed it to be both functional and symbolic. Glass walls representing transparency, a substantial desk anchoring the room like a declaration of permanence, carefully chosen artwork reflecting creativity and resilience. The journalist, Catherine Lynn, greeted me with professional warmth. "Ms. Mitchell, thank you for making time during your reception. Your studio's transformation over the past year has become something of a legend in design circles." "Hardly a legend," I demurred, taking a seat across from her. "Just a natural evolution accelerated by unexpected circumstances. Those circumstances being the fraudulent transfer of your investment properties and subsequent legal battle with your former in-laws?" Catherine asked directly, though not unkindly. I had expected the question. The story had received considerable local coverage during the criminal proceedings, with business publications noting the unusual deed restrictions that had proven so crucial to the resolution. That was certainly a catalyst, I acknowledged. But Evergreen's growth is more about recognizing opportunities and building on solid foundations than reacting to setbacks. Catherine nodded, activating her recorder with my permission. "Your property deed restrictions have become something of a case study in financial self-protection. Was that level of foresight unusual for you, or part of a broader approach to security? My grandmother taught me to protect what I valued, I explained. She believed in preparation without paranoia, taking reasonable precautions while still living openly and generously. The deed restrictions were one example of that philosophy. And those restrictions essentially saved your investment portfolio? They provided the legal foundation for voiding the fraudulent transfers immediately, rather than enduring years of litigation with uncertain outcomes. Time was the critical factor. Each day the properties remained in limbo represented lost income and opportunities. The interview continued, touching on Evergreen's design approach, our expanding client base, and plans for the future. Catherine was thorough and insightful, asking about the integration of sustainable materials and universal design principles that had become central to our commercial projects. As we concluded, she asked one final question. Many people would have been consumed by bitterness after such a profound betrayal by family. Yet you've channeled that experience into remarkable growth, both professionally and personally. How did you manage that transition from victim to victor? I considered my response carefully. I never saw myself as either victim or victor. Those labels suggest a battle where one side must lose for the other to win. I prefer to think in terms of restoration and creation, restoring what was wrongfully taken, then creating something better than what existed before. After the journalist departed, I rejoined the reception, circulating among clients, colleagues, and friends who had supported me throughout the past year's challenges. Chelsea had been promoted to creative director, overseeing a team of 5 designers. Daniel had helped structure the mineral rights leases for the Lakeview property, generating steady passive income that supplemented the restored rental revenue from my original properties. Andrew approached with congratulations and an update on the final loose end in the legal proceedings. The court approved the last restitution payment from the Wilsons yesterday. The case is officially closed from a financial perspective. That's welcome news, I replied. How are they doing with the payments? Surprisingly consistent. Martha's real estate license was revoked, but she's working as an office manager at a friend's insurance agency. Harold is consulting part-time for a local bank, limited responsibilities given his conviction, but enough to contribute to the restitution schedule. And Ryan? Released on parole last month. He's working at a tech support center, entry-level position but stable employment, which satisfies his parole requirements. I nodded, feeling neither satisfaction nor sympathy at this accounting of the Wilson family's diminished circumstances. Their actions had earned consequences, and they were facing them with more dignity than I might have expected. And Jack? I asked, though I had deliberately maintained distance from my ex-husband since the divorce was finalized. Relocated to Minneapolis, found a position with a financial services firm that was willing to hire him despite the felony record, given his cooperation with prosecutors and the limited nature of his conviction. The information produced no emotional response, no residual anger, no lingering attachment, not even curiosity about his new life. Jack had become simply another character in a chapter that had closed, his relevance fading with each passing. As evening approached and the reception began to wind down, Sophia found me on the rooftop terrace where we had created an urban garden oasis above the converted industrial building. Successful launch by any measure, she observed, gesturing to the groups of people still engaged in animated conversation throughout the space. You should be proud. I am, I admitted, allowing myself to acknowledge the achievement without qualification or diminishment. Not just of the studio's growth, but of how we got here, making conscious choices rather than just reacting to circumstances. Sophia nodded understanding. The Emma Mitchell who walked into my office a year ago, with news of stolen properties, was already strong. The Emma hosting this reception is something more. Centered, confident, clear about her direction. Her observation resonated with my own sense of transformation. The past year had stripped away pretense and compromise, revealing priorities. and values that had sometimes been obscured by accommodation of others' expectations. "I've been meaning to tell you," I said, changing the subject slightly. "I'm establishing a foundation focused on financial literacy and legal protection for women, particularly those in unstable relationships or transitional circumstances." "That's wonderful," Sophia replied, genuine enthusiasm lighting her features. "Using your experience to help others avoid similar situations." "Exactly. We'll provide guidance on securing assets, establishing legal protections, recognizing financial red flags, and creating exit strategies when necessary. I'm funding it initially with a portion of the mineral rights income from the Lakeview property." The symmetry felt right, using proceeds from an asset acquired through the Wilson family's fraud to help others protect themselves from similar exploitation. "Have you decided on a name?" Sophia asked. "The Deed Foundation," I replied. "Double. Meaning intended." She smiled appreciatively at the wordplay. "Perfect." As night fell over Westbrook, the city lights created a twinkling backdrop to our rooftop sanctuary. Guests gradually departed with congratulations and promises of future collaboration. When only my closest supporters remained, Sophia, Daniel, Andrew, Chelsea, and Olivia, we gathered around the fire pit at the center of the garden. "A toast," Daniel proposed, raising his glass. "To Emma Mitchell, who turned a potentially devastating setback into the foundation for unprecedented growth." "To deed restrictions," Andrew added with a knowing smile, "and the foresight to implement them before they're needed." "To new beginnings built on hard-earned wisdom," Sophia contributed. I raised my own glass, looking at each person who had played a crucial role in not just my recovery, but my transformation. "To all of you who demonstrated what genuine support looks like, and to my grandmother, whose advice about protecting what matters continues to shape my decisions." The conversation flowed easily among friends who had become something like family, not through obligation or shared name, but through demonstrated loyalty and mutual respect. As midnight approached, I found myself alone on the terrace after the others had departed, contemplating the city skyline and the journey of the past year. The Wilson family had attempted to appropriate my assets for their own purposes, seeing my financial independence as a resource to be exploited, rather than a boundary to be respected. Their fraud had nearly succeeded, would have succeeded without the deed restrictions that provided immediate legal remedy. Yet their actions, intended to diminish me, had instead catalyzed expansion of my business, my independence, my understanding of both protection and possibility. The properties they had attempted to steal had been returned and improved. The business they had dismissed as a hobby had grown into a regional design leader. The woman they had underestimated had emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined to create security for herself and others. I thought of the Deed Foundation and the women it would serve, providing both practical tools and psychological reinforcement for those establishing financial boundaries. The educational programs, legal consultations, and emergency grants would transform vulnerabilities into safeguards, just as my deed restrictions had done. From my rooftop sanctuary, with the converted industrial building beneath me in the city, spread out before me, I could see the physical manifestation of my transformation. The loft and studio spaces represented not just recovery from betrayal, but evolution beyond what had existed before. Professional expansion, creative expression, genuine security built on clear-eyed assessment of both possibility and risk. The Wilson family had emptied accounts and stolen properties, thinking they were securing their son's future at my expense. They couldn't have anticipated how thoroughly that calculation would backfire, how the deed restrictions would invalidate their fraud, how the legal consequences would diminish their social and financial standing, how the Lakeview property transferred as restitution would provide ongoing income through mineral rights they had failed to properly value. Most significantly, they couldn't have predicted how their actions would liberate rather than diminish me, freeing me from a marriage built on unequal respect, from family dynamics that undermined rather than supported my goals, from compromise that too often veered into capitulation. The night air carried the faint scent of the herbs planted along the terrace perimeter. Rosemary for remembrance, sage for wisdom, lavender for peace. I had designed this garden as both sanctuary and reminder, a space that acknowledged the path traveled while celebrating the destination reached. Tomorrow would bring new clients, new projects, new opportunities to create environments that reflected intentional design rather than circumstance. The deed foundation would begin its work, transforming my individual experience into collective protection for others facing similar vulnerabilities. The deed restrictions I had added years ago had changed everything. Not just preserving my financial security, but revealing the strength that had always existed within me, the resilience that transformed challenge into opportunity, the wisdom that recognized protection and possibility as complementary rather than contradictory forces. The Wilson family had tried to take what was mine, believing they were entitled to use my assets for their purposes. Instead, they had inadvertently set me free. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.